Hey, welcome back to my reviews of Tai Lopez's 67 Steps. This is step number 53. And this one is the second rule. And the second rule is never forget the first rule. This one's about motive and profit. Or profit motive, as we like to say. And this one's pretty much about business. So let's get right into it. I think one thing that we've all pretty much accepted is that you need to have money to live in this world, And how do you get money? Simple question, And you exchange your skill on some level, on your skill for money, and then you exchange that money for other people's skills. So how do you get that money? And you get that money by capturing value, So if you're a great artist, musician, software developer, if you sit in a room and you work on your skill, that's great. But if you never leave, never go out into the market and try and capture some value for that skill, you're not going to make any money, obviously. I mean, it sounds obvious, but people don't focus enough, I think, on the vehicle. Wealthy people do, because every wealthy person, self-made wealthy person, has a great vehicle. Some of them offer very small value, but they have such an efficient vehicle for capturing that value that they can make great amounts of money even from a small value. Normally, though, they have high value as well. So capturing that value, having a system to do that, that's what business is. And value, like it or not, is perceived. It's not a logical or absolute measurement. You may think that video games have no value. They don't do any good for anybody in general. But they have a very high perceived value because they're entertainment. And, you have other things that are similar to that as well. I mean, you look at alcohol and tobacco, So Warren Buffett has this thing. And his first rule of business is don't lose money. And his second rule of business is don't forget the first rule. So capturing the value and building your skill for capturing value. Don't forget about fundamentals. Now, Tai goes on about this, and I think it's a little off the mark, but I have such a good anecdote about it that I want to go off the mark as well. So many people focus on these high levels, these subtle differences of knowledge and skill. And in software development terms, when I was doing that a lot, I always used to call this back of the book development. And that was people who would buy a book about software and immediately go to the back and say, okay, this is the solution we're going to implement. Because at the back of the book, of course, was the most complicated, use every trick in the book, literally, solution that you could get. Whereas sometimes from chapter 1 or chapter 2, you would have just as good a solution and perhaps better because it was more simple. And software simplicity is of high value because you have to maintain it. So this is the thing. You have to figure out what's of value, And, you can't sit in the room. And value, business is not about taking people's money for something that we talked about this before, the Pareto efficiency of win-win. And you look at Mother Teresa. I mean, Mother Teresa didn't just sit in a room and pray, right? She went out there, she persuaded, and she raised money. That was her vehicle. So you need a good value. A good vehicle, and you need to create good value. You need both of those things. And then you need to be able to persuade people about your value. This step kind of builds on a lot of other steps. So it's about communication as well, right? If you can't persuade people, show people what value you're offering, you're not going to be able to capture it. And, this is why get rich quick schemes, think about it for a second, of course, it's ridiculous, If you can start something on Monday and make $1 million by Friday, well, you can't be bringing much value because you don't have the one critical component about skill building, and that is time. So you're not doing anything unique. If you can do something like that, you're not doing anything unique, and somebody will come along who's a little bit better than you and will beat the pants off you. And my experience is get rich quick schemes, the only person who gets rich is the person who sells you the scheme, you know. So develop your value. Take your time. And Tai had pointed out something good, which is this story about Stephen Hawking. You know, and Stephen Hawking was in academia for a long time in England, and he probably didn't make very much money. But in the 80s, he wrote this book that he crafted well at a general enough audience, and that book, you know, became a cash machine, really. And the time it took him to write the book, that was part of the creating the system, you know, creating the vehicle. And his long time of building his knowledge was creating the value. And he was a genius, you know, so I'm not saying that I or you are going to be like Stephen Hawking. I'm just saying that's an illustration. He had great value, but it wasn't until he created the vehicle that he could capture that value. So, you know, 3 rules of value, okay? Do you have enough skill? Is there enough inside of you to create something unique, masterful, wonderful, however you want to say it? Is that value perceived out in the marketplace? And Tai had a good example of sports players versus teachers. Now, his argument was, you know, sports people, they can get 18,000 people or 20,000 people into an arena to see them play one night. But teachers, they have only 20 or 50 or whatever it is, pupils, but they have it over a career. And of course, teachers have such a great impact, higher impact on your life than a sports person does for most of us. Every one of us was probably affected by a teacher that we had in our school time. But not every one of us, and perhaps few of us, have had any life change because of a sports person. But for some reason, there's a higher perceived value. And some of those reasons might be scarcity. There's an awful lot of teachers, not so many pro basketball players. And demand. People are fanatical about entertainment and sports. And so there's a higher demand. People don't see a demand for teachers, you know. So that's thing number 2. And number 3 is, you know, can you build a vehicle around that value and getting customers? Can you persuade customers? Because sometimes you can have a good value, but you can't build a vehicle. You don't have the skills of building the vehicle. You need that as well, right? So don't be afraid of profit. Profit's not a bad thing. You know, making money is not a bad thing. You have to look at, you're exchanging, you know, what you feel strongly about for money. You know, you just have to figure out how to do that. And there's a quote at the end here from Jim Rohn, which is that, you know, the world doesn't respond to need, it responds to seed. So you may need money or want money, but you haven't put in the time, you haven't planted the seed and grown something that will generate the value and capture it. So there you go. It's an interesting step, you know, this one. It's talking about the last couple ones are kind of really moralistic view on what you do for your business. Anyway, he has 3 questions here. And question number 1 is, what's your superpower? What value can you offer to the world? And if you don't have that, how can you develop it? He didn't say that part, but I think, you know, what's your skill? How are you going to develop it? And question number 2 is, how well are you at capturing the value and building the system to pull in the value? And number 3 is, what can you do to add more value in? You know, read books, launch your products, you know, tell the world, all of these things. It's all about capturing that. I hope you like this one. I don't know if I said it well. I don't know if Tai said it well, but I hope you understand the concept that he's talking about. You know, I'm summarizing. So, step 53, dozen or so to go, and we'll see you soon. Please subscribe, comment, share, do whatever you want. Share as in give it to your friends, not as in share as in the singer. All right, bye for now.